So you know how there's this kind of unspoken divide between the crafting community and the fine arts community? I mean, crafters use things like glue guns and scissors and glitter, while artists use things like oil paints and words like composition. Frankly, I don't really have much to say on the matter, but I have always kind of find myself more on the crafter side of the spectrum. I mean, I make greeting cards, I love my foam tape and my stamps. I typically don't even look in the direction of paintbrushes, but today, that changes. Now you may be asking yourself, Ralph, why pick up a paintbrush? And that's a valid question. I received an email a couple of weeks ago from Glowforge asking if I'd like to have early access to their cozy Crafternoon event that they have coming up. And if you follow me for a while, you know that I have a Glowforge laser printer and I've worked with them a few times in the past. So of course I was enthusiastic to get early access to this class, but that excitement quickly turned to nervousness when I saw that the primary focus of this event was painting. Something that I am very much not an expert in. But you know what, I thought about it, and as many of you know, I have been trying to stretch myself creatively recently, and I figured this must just be the universe kind of forcing me to get outside of my comfort zone. I also figured what better way to show all of you that you don't have to be an expert at something just to enjoy the process. So why not? Let's give it a shot. Now, I realize you may need a little bit more context on what this Cozy Crafternoon event is that I'm referring to. Well, Glowforge is putting on a live virtual event on April 16th called Cozy Crafternoon, where they will be walking you through a step-by-step guide of creating and painting your own three-dimensional art pieces that are inspired by the US national parks. This is a free live event where you can join crafters from around the world and create your art pieces together. Now, Glowforge did give me early access to the instructions for this class so that I could share a little bit of a sneak peek with all of you, but if you're interested in joining the live event on April 16th, you can find the details to register down below. And if you're watching this after April 16th, no worries, just sit back and enjoy the show. And thank you to Glowforge for sponsoring this video. All right, so first things first is we have to actually cut out the design for our painting today. Like I mentioned, this is a three-dimensional design, so we're actually going to be working in layers. And for the material today that we're cutting, we are using these art boards by Canson. Now, I believe that Glowforge recommended using the mixed media art boards. However, my local supply store only had the Canva art boards in stock, which I think is fine. It's just a little bit of a different texture on the actual art board itself. So this one has a little bit more of a canvas texture. And these are super easy to cut. I was a little bit intimidated because I've never cut anything on Glowforge except for their proof grade materials. But for this, I had to input some custom settings, but honestly, super easy and super quick to cut. And the great thing is that when you sign up, Glowforge actually provides all of the SVG files for you to cut. So there's really no work necessary on your end. And I think it's also important to mention that you can also use these SVG files to cut paper or watercolor paper or other types of materials using your existing blade cutting machines if you don't have a laser printer. So if you're watching this video and think that this might be something you'd like to try, don't let the fact that you don't have a laser printer keep you from trying this project. So with our prints done, we have come to the part that I have been the most anxious about, but I'm also excited about, and that is, of course, the painting. Now you can see here that we have printed out 4 different layers. We have our background layer, and then these mountains that are kind of off in the distance. Some up close, I believe this will be like a tree line, and then some up close trees as well. Now, I've already watched a little bit of this video, and Kate Hickman, who is the talented artist and designer who created this file and painting, recommended working on the back panel and working your way forward. So we're gonna start with this background panel. Now, one pro tip she did mention is to take your panels and grab a pencil and just kind of trace on the background where each layer overlaps. That way, we're gonna paint this background, but we really only need to paint what is showing up here up top. You don't necessarily need to waste your time adding a bunch of paint down at the bottom because the next layer is going to cover it. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that for all 4 of these layers. Okay. So we have something like that. Now I'm gonna go ahead and set these 3 to the side, and we're gonna get started on our background layer. Now, as I believe I mentioned at the beginning of this video, there are actually 3 different designs or files you can choose to make. Now, I went with the Great Smoky Mountain design because I felt like that was the most accessible for me from a painting perspective. Just looking at the example image, I thought to myself, I could probably paint that. The other ones I'm sure I could as well, but they looked a little bit more detailed, and this one looked, I don't know, it just felt more approachable for me. However, I must say that the Sequoia National Park one was gorgeous. I really wanted to do that one, but I was a little nervous I wouldn't do the trees justice. So Great Smoky Mountains it is. Also, I used to drive through the Smoky Mountains all the time, so it felt fitting. So I have kind of a time-lapse video here of Kate doing her painting. Now, if you join the class live, of course you'll have live instruction, but I am just following kind of this time-lapse video that she did. So I'm just gonna look at what she's doing and do my best to mimic it. I'm not gonna go off script and do my own painting. I'm just gonna try to follow the expert here. So it looks like first and foremost, she kind of mixed together a creamy yellow, a creamy coral, and kind of a creamy-ish orange colors, and that's what she's using for the ombre of her sky. So that's what I'm gonna try to make here. Now I am using acrylic paints. I believe she's using gouache. Is that how you say it? Gouache paint, which is kind of like a watercolor with white pigment added to it. I don't have that, so I'm just gonna do my best to use these little acrylic inks and we'll see what shakes out. So, what am I doing? I don't know. I'm just grabbing every orange and red I can because we're gonna need to mix some colors here. So she has these like really creamy looking warm colors. So how do I get that? I guess let's start with the yellow. So I'm gonna add a little bit of yellow here. What color is this? This is lemon yellow. What do you know? And then I'm assuming to get the creamy look, we're gonna wanna add some white. That's titanium white. This is metallic white. What do you think the difference is? They look exactly the same. I'm gonna go with titanium white. Okay. Now, if I was a real expert, I would have a perfect little blending palette knife, but I just have this flat one that's probably way too big. But you know what? We're gonna make it work. Okay, that is cute, but I think it actually needs to be more pale. So let's add a little more white. I feel like this is definitely not the best tool to be doing this, especially because I'm using a metal palette knife on a, what is this, enamel porcelain palette. It's making a pretty terrible noise, but that's on me. That being said, I do feel like this is getting close to what she has in her video. I'm gonna actually add even more white. Ooh, that was a lot, okay. Now, I might regret this, but I'm actually gonna add, I think, a little bit more color, not white, just because this feels very like, almost like a neon-y yellow. I'm gonna add a little bit of this, what is this? Yellow ochre, I don't know what that is. Just to give it a tiny bit more tint, to make it a little bit of a duller yellow. Does that make sense? I don't know, maybe that doesn't make sense. Okay, so my problem is this is now starting to look a little orangey, but it also, actually, you know what? I think that's pretty good. I like it. Okay, so that's our yellow. I don't even know what I'm doing, okay. And then, let's see, she also did like a corally color. So that'll be what? I'm gonna do this vermilion. How do you pronounce that? I've always seen that word, but I've never had to pronounce it out loud. Vermilion? Vermilion? It's like an orangey red. And then of course we're gonna add some white. And we mix. Okay, that actually looks very close to the coral color that she's using. Wow, I'm proud of myself. But I am gonna add, I just feel like I might end up needing more. So I'm gonna add a tiny dot more of white. And the vermilion, or vermilion, whatever you call it. Ah, it's too much. Okay, okay. It's probably fine. It's probably fine, it's fine, it's fine, it's all fine. Okay, I think that looks pretty dang good. Let's now move on to our orange. Last but not least, there's kind of like a orangey color. So this is, they call this one orange red. And it's kind of like a rusty-ish orange. I also want to add some more of this yellow. So I feel like that's kind of like, this looks like Dijon mustard is what it looks like. And then of course, let's add a little white as well. I do feel like her colors are a little more muted than mine. I don't know if that's because she's using the gouache or if she's just better at color theory than me, which is very likely. By the way, like I said, the artist who designed all of these, her name is Kate Hickman. I had actually never heard of her or seen her work before this, but I now follow her on Instagram. She makes gorgeous paintings, so highly recommend checking her out. Okay, I think we did it. I think we did it. We have our sky colors, yay! Okay, so let me move these paintings off to the side, bring our little palette over here, and oh my gosh, okay. It's time to paint. So it looks like to start off, all she's doing is she's doing kind of like a tri-tone, I think about ink blending, like a little ombre blend. And she's starting with yellow and then moving into the coral and then into the orange. So I'm gonna start by wetting my brush. I'm just taking a large flat brush here. What size is this? 3/4 of an inch. And let's pick up a little bit of our yellow, because it seems like that's what she started with. Just swipe it on. I'm doing it. Look, I'm a painter. And I think I'm just gonna accept the fact that this mat under me is going to get dirty. It is what it is. If any of you have been following me for a long time and you used to watch my old TikToks, I used to always craft on this mat. So it's making a reappearance here. Now, part of me does wonder if I'm using, like if I shouldn't be using acrylic paints. I think obviously you can use really whatever paints you want, but to get the design she has, she's using a lot of water because like I said, the gouache paints, I believe, are water activated to some degree. I don't know. Again, I'm not an artist. I don't know what I'm talking about. But I'm wondering if she has like an easier time blending her colors than what I'm gonna have. And it actually looks like she does kind of the same thing that I do when I'm ink blending, is I like to put my colors down first, just all in a row, and then I'll go back and worry about blending them together. This is already making me think that I should paint more often. Wow, this is relaxing. Have any of you ever done one of those like painting with a twist classes where you like go and make a painting and drink wine? I did that once as a team building activity when I still worked in corporate America, and it was fun. My painting was okay. All right, let's go in with the orange. But I do feel like I've learned a lot just from making cards and stuff. I think I've gotten a lot better at artsy stuff since then, so I'm hoping this painting will, you know, turn out even better. Okay. Now let's kind of blend these guys together a little bit. How am I gonna do that? I don't know. I have a wet brush and I just kind of go back and forth, right? Maybe I'll add a little bit of, I'm gonna add a little bit of yellow on half and a little bit of this coral on the other half, maybe. Okay. Yeah, it's kind of blending, right? Now I guess let's do the same thing with the coral and the orange. I'll get coral on half my brush, orange on half my brush. Just kind of go back and forth, back and forth. Cute, okay. I think it needs to be blended together even more, but honestly, it's looking pretty good, I think. Oh, I don't know though, but it's also one of those things where it's like, do you just stop while you're ahead? I feel like it could be one of those things. Okay, I'm moving the yellow up into the pink, for better or worse. And I think I'm gonna do the same thing with the pink, or coral, whatever you call it. Oh God, I'm nervous, okay. Okay, I think that's doing something. Actually, you know what? I do kind of want to bring that corally pink down a little bit more into the yellow. Ugh. Don't mess up, bro. Okay, I think that's pretty good. What do y'all think? Kind of like a sunsetty, hazy sky. Okay, I don't know how I feel about this, but it looks like now she's adding like long lines using a very skinny brush. So let's see. What do I have? This is probably skinny. It feels a little fat. Let's maybe try this one. Yeah, I think that'll work. So I think with these lines, what she's trying to do is just kind of give the illusion of clouds. So let's pick up some yellow. I feel like I need to do a practice stroke, because how on earth does she do her strokes so straight? Ooh, do I need more paint? Okay, mine do not look like hers. Very interesting. Is my brush too fat? Do I need a skinnier brush? I think this is the skinniest brush I own. Or maybe it needs to be wetter. Is that a thing? Or again, maybe it's because I don't have the paint that she's using. But how does she, oh, see, I cannot even go straight. How does she get such beautiful, thick lines? Okay, you know what, we might have the basic version. Ours might be the basic painting version. Okay, I'm just gonna go for it. Okay, I think maybe the trick is she's using very light pressure. Because I'm using lighter pressure here, and that seems to be doing something. Okay, I think I've accepted that my sky is never gonna look like Kate's, and I need to, from this point forward, just assume that's just never gonna be the case for any part of this painting. But I don't know, I think it looks cute. I mean, for my standards, it's looking very good. So I think let's go ahead and move on to the next layer. All right, so moving on to the next layer, we have kind of our mountain range here in the distance, and it's really helpful. We have these score lines that the Glowforge already made for us, and you can kind of think of this as a little bit like a coloring book. So you're really just kind of painting in the lines. So again, Kate has taken a lot of the guesswork out for us. And off camera, I went ahead and mixed a bunch of colors over here. I didn't think y'all necessarily needed to see me struggle through that once again, but I did a lot of cool tones over here, a lot of greens and some blue and purple. And I'm gonna do my best to just go in and paint this little mountain range now. And I feel like since doing that first layer, my expectations of myself have now come down, but in a good way. I'm not in a self-deprecating way, just in a way that like, okay, Ralph, it's not gonna be perfect, so just do your best. Now I am gonna go in with a smaller brush this time, obviously, because these are some tighter areas here. So what size is this? This is a size 5, whatever that means. That actually feels like maybe it'll still be a little too big. Let's go in with a size 3. That sounds good. And I'm gonna start from the back moving forward. So we're gonna start with this farthest little mountain range here. And she did that in purple, so you know what? I'm gonna do that in purple. Okay, so we have our purple kind of strip of mountains there in the background. You know what? I am going to, dare I get a little adventurous, and I'm going to add a tiny bit of, what is this? It's a dark gray. They call it metallic black. Am I putting shiny paint down? Is that what the metallic means? I think it does have some mica in there. Okay, whatever. We'll have shiny paint, that's fine. Now I'm gonna grab a little bit of this purple and just mix it in with this gray. Ooh, that gray is pretty overpowering. Let's add a little bit more of the purple. There we go, that's what I want, right there. And then I'm gonna get an even smaller brush if we have one. I guess that's this one, right? This is a 1. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is we have our purple mountain range here, and then I'm gonna grab this kind of darker purple and just very lightly go in and do the very tops of the mountain range to the best of my abilities, just to help add a little bit of dimension by adding those shadows. Okay, so that wasn't perfect, but I think it worked somewhat. It adds a little bit more detail and interest, I suppose. And then what I'm gonna do is I'll probably speed this next part up because you don't wanna watch me do this in real time, trust me. I'm just gonna go through and do each of these little sections in a different one of these colors, and I'll probably try to do the same thing where I'll mix up a darker version of that same color just to kind of outline that top mountain line. All right, y'all, you know what? I am not gonna lie, I'm pretty impressed with myself. Now, is this looking as good as Kate's? Absolutely not, of course not. But you know what? I think it looks pretty good, especially considering I'm using the acrylics instead of the gouache. I feel like I don't know, I'm pretty proud of myself. I even made my own little like hill mountain thing here. That's not part of the etched or scored or engraved or whatever you want to call it design. I actually made that little guy myself. So I think we are doing well. And just to give you a little bit of a sneaky peek, this is kind of what it will look like once it's layered together. But I'm gonna go ahead and set this to the side to dry, and then we'll get started on the third layer. All right, and so here we have lovely layer number 3. Now this is primarily just like treetops, and Kate recommended going in first with our mid-tone green. So I'm gonna go in and color this whole thing kind of a solid mid-tone green. And then she recommended going in and adding shadows and highlights, but always doing the highlights very last. So that's what I'm gonna try to do. And she's just kind of doing like a base layer of green, and then, you know, kind of just doing some, I don't wanna say random, but just very natural, organic looking, fluffy kind of shadows and highlights to emulate treetops. All right, y'all, so I did go ahead and paint the 4th layer just because it is kind of similar in color and technique as the way we painted the 3rd layer. So just went ahead and knocked both of them out at the same time. But with that, I think it is finally time to assemble our project. Now, this part of the process feels super familiar to me because it is awful crafty. All we're gonna do is use a little bit of foam tape. But just as a reminder, we have our sky piece, then we have our mountains, the beginning of our treetops, and then the rest of our hilltops, or treetops, sorry. Now, if you wanted to, of course, you could just glue these all together straight. That already gives you a lot of dimension just from having all of these layered on top of each other. But if you want to get a little bit of extra dimension, you can use some foam tape. Now, you do want to make sure all of your layers are dry. I did blast all of these with my heat gun for a little bit. So just as if we were to be assembling a card, all we're going to do is take our foam tape and add enough to the back of this layer so that we can support itself, or so that it can support itself, whatever. And if you don't want to use foam tape, you could also cut out extra little pieces of the artboard if you want, like little tiny spacers if you want to glue in between them, or you could use any type of mounting material between these if you'd like. Now, I'm going to use 3 strips just because that feels the most secure to me. And then we'll go ahead and take the backer off and carefully line these layers up. Now, I could bring out my Misty to do this, as you've seen me do a million times, but I think what I'm gonna do is just take these 2 edges and bring them up to meet each other. Somehow I did that perfect. Okay, now for layer number 3. Now, Glowforge also does include cut files in case you wanted to create a custom frame for your artwork. I unfortunately don't have any wood cutting material on hand, so I won't be making a frame for mine today, but I can show you some examples here on the screen of what that would look like as well. All right, let's go ahead and add our 3rd layer. These are actually easier to line up than paper, I feel like, for some reason. And then last but not least, we have our last layer. All right. Very carefully line up the last layer. We don't want to mess up here at the very end. And voila, there we go. We have our completed Smoky Mountain 3-dimensional, do you see how thick that baby is? 3-dimensional painting. I'm honestly pretty impressed with myself. I mean, is it as impressive as Kate's paintings? Absolutely not. But I did do a better job than I thought I might. My only critique is that I wish that my highlights were a little bit brighter down here in the bottom half of the photo, and I wish that my lines up here, I could have done more of them and done them thinner, but you know what? There's always room for improvement. I think for a non-painter, this turned out pretty good. Now remember, if this is a project that you think you might enjoy, be sure to use my link down below to sign up for Glowforge's Cozy Crafternoon virtual event. And remember, there are 2 other design files and paintings that you get as part of that event, including Sequoia National Park and Yosemite. So if you're a fan of national parks in general, this is a great opportunity. But with that, I think this video has come to a close. Thank you so much for being here. Let me know what types of crafts or art projects you would like to see me dabble in next as I continue to spread my creative wings, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye, y'all.